$1,000 bonus at the end of the year. Well, oh, wait a minute. Nobody would have said anything. I heard about it accidentally. And only because our board had already made this commitment, I wrote a letter, I made them sign it. That's all it was. And we ended up getting some other money from another pot of funding to replace that. But that never would have happened if we didn't have a coalition, if we didn't have a board that agreed to do policy. We also did not have GED testing in New Orleans for at least 2 years. After the hurricane, same reason, because the school system ran it and the schools were just in complete disarray. And so I was a GED facilitator for 2 years. Thank you very much. And it was a lot of work. We had to really push people to come down and do GED testing. And as we said, there were fewer programs, fewer students, but the students who were there, they really had to want to be there. If it was after the hurricane, a lot of students had some awakenings that they could kind of get by doing, under the radar jobs for friends and family when they were in New Orleans, but they got shipped to Houston or to Atlanta and they didn't know anybody. And if you didn't have a high school diploma, you couldn't get a job. So a lot of people had that realization, but then of course there's no place to take the test. And then we've been advocating regularly for adult literacy in the workforce development funding, but that's win some, lose some all the time. So the vision and goals and selection criteria, you're welcome to steal any of that. But it really works for us because we really thought about what were our top issues. That first paragraph is about what we want to have happen in our community for literacy, that everybody understands that literacy is systemic, not individual. This is the amount of money that we want. And then also that there is supportive needs that go along with literacy instruction. You can't just offer classes. And then that second set of bullets is just about us as an organization, what we want. And then on page 7 is our broad public policy goals. Greater focus. Number 2, I think one of y'all mentioned that in the things that you worry about, a system-wide coordination of existing services. We've probably got 30, last time I looked, there was like 30 programs federally that money could be used for adult literacy. But they're just all little pots and pieces here and there. Nobody talks to each other. Nobody, coordinates anything. The largest program that we have is through the U.S. Department of Education, and it serves only 5% of the need. So for me, it's not just about growing that one particular pot. That's one strategy, but you have to look at all the other pots of money in social services and labor and economic development. All those people have money for literacy too. English language. We in New Orleans did not have, and Louisiana did not have a big immigrant population until the hurricane. And now they all came in and helped with the rebuilding. We're so very grateful. But our English language services are very slow to catch up. Corporate partners, culture in New Orleans, and then the criteria for selecting issues, that's sort of a given, but it sort of helps us have something that we can say about our public policy and advocacy. Any questions on those? Yes?
With your Acadian population, the French that...
Yes. Moved, we're moved, yeah.
With the adults, is there any demand for literacy in French?
Well, it's kind of come and gone. And in New Orleans, we don't deal a whole lot with them. Most of the Acadians are west of us in the Lafayette area, Baton Rouge to Lafayette in that area. And in working with those folks, there was a lot of no French at all. I'm sure anybody moved anywhere. And then lately, there's been, I say in the last 20 years, sort of a resurgence of having more things in French. And I will say that I got to go to France when I was in high school because of an organization called Council for the Development of French in Louisiana. And so there's been a lot more effort to do that. But I haven't heard of any adult literacy being needed in French. They're really trying to get more people to speak French rather than to get us to teach them in French because there's just not enough people speaking French. So no, that's a long answer to no. Any other comments or questions? So 2009, 3 things happened at the same time. I got my first grant, yay, for advocacy ever. And it was $25,000. I had great plans for it to do proactive public policy, and then budget cuts, 66% budget cuts for adult ed. And the governor proposed to move the administration of it from one department to another one, which was, I think, a good thing. So the community grant that I got was from the local community fund. They used to be called Community Chest. It's called the Greater New Orleans Foundation, because they had a new director, and he went around and asked people, what did you need? Ta-da! They never do that. And he heard the same thing from a lot of different organizations, that they need help with public policy and advocacy. They want to make systemic change, not just more money for programs. So we got that, and I had other plans for it, but what we ended up doing was working on the budget cuts and working on the movement. So the activities and actions are all listed there. Like I said, this was a good thing and a bad thing. Budget cuts are always bad, but they get everybody moving. Adult education was the only department of education that got cut 66% because they don't care about us. So it's always this, redheaded stepchild. I hate that term. And they everything else got cut a little bit, like they spread the cuts out over all the agencies, except for adult ed got this ginormous cut. So everybody was really, really angry. And then the fact that the governor, he had all this, streamlining, moving things around, wanted to move it from the Department of Education, which runs the public schools, to the community and technical college system. It was a really great opportunity for us to go and talk not just about the money. It's like we're here to talk about the importance of adult education, not just we need more money. So those three things happened at the same time. And the first thing we did, I should have put it first, is that we hired experienced help. Y'all, can I tell you how beneficial she was? She was a consultant, she's a lobbyist, but she only works for nonprofit organizations. And I didn't know what I didn't know, about our legislative system. And primarily what we've done so far, this is all 2010 work, is some of the things that she did for us is developed a statewide database of supporters. We didn't have that, although it's mostly providers. Do y'all call people providers? That's people who provide services. Do y'all say agencies, programs? Same thing. We partnered, there was a state professional organization that had public policy as one of their missions, but they really didn't do much. So when we brought money to the table, it was like, here, we're bringing money, this is what we're providing, can you put in some of your resources? And they did. We primarily worked in the legislative arena, went to committee meetings. We had our first adult adult education awareness day, like y'all did, at the Capitol. 90 people. 50% students. We talked to 40 legislators. We had a table. But the consultant, I have to say, having somebody, she was at the legislature every day during the session. She called me because the committee meetings kept changing times and they kept changing. She'd say, your bill is coming up tomorrow. You have to be here for 9 a.m. Well, I would never know that if she wasn't there to tell me. She got me meetings with people that I never would have gotten. And I'll just tell you this one little story, that third bullet, the head of the Department of Social Services, there was another pot of funding that got cut that was being used for 7 programs. And, we had been making phone calls and making phone calls and making phone calls, and nobody was calling us back to tell us what was happening with this money. And she got us a meeting with the head of this state agency. And I couldn't believe it. And we go into the meeting, and there's like 6 people there. And it's me and the woman who runs the Literacy Coalition, Baton Rouge, and Cindy. And Cindy's like staring at me like this. Her eyes are really big. And I'm like, oh, God, something's wrong. And so we just presented our case about, what was happening with the money. And the people from the Department of Social Service didn't even know that things had changed. I mean, we gave them information about how things were moving, because there's like 3 or 4 pots of money. This is why you need help, because you can't find it. I mean, she helped us even find where it was in the budget. There's like 3 or 4 pots of money, and 2 of them went, and one of them didn't. One of them went someplace else. So we were trying to hunt down this third one. Where did it go? And so we ended up not getting that money anyway, but because it was too late. But when we got downstairs, I finally realized how we got that meeting is because she's been a lobbyist for the Child care industry and the schools, hospitals and schools industry. So they knew her already, and they knew that she could make things happen. If they didn't meet with us, then she'd call somebody else. She's the never say no person. I mean, talk about hang on like a bulldog. This woman called and went and showed up in people's offices. And I was just really amazed because we would have no clue. We would have just gotten some sort of form letter in the mail that said this funding, or maybe we wouldn't have, this funding is not being renewed. And so I cannot, and she gave us lots of tips on what to say, how to say it, do this, do that. She introduced us to tons of people. That little bit in italics is her report, and we called it the Louisiana Literacy Alliance, even though it was mostly coming from New Orleans, but you can't say that. I mean, we wanted it to be a statewide thing, but that's not really a real organization. And where we are right now is that last paragraph in the underline area is getting all of our legislators to come into our programs and see what we do. That's kind of what I think is what's missing. After the legislative session is over, what do you do next? So what we're trying to do is get people to see the value of adult literacy. Any questions on that? Comments? If you look on page 9, the work plan, I will say that there's one that was on a work plan that we did not do because it was proactive. We just ran out of time. That number 3, funding for low literacy and English programs within the Louisiana State Library. So that's one of our ongoing issues, is to find money for literacy in other agencies. Like I said, they all have it. They all can use it. I know they can. We just have to help them because they're just going to do, like they said, inaction. They're just going to do what they're currently doing, and it may not be the best way to do it. But how do you get in and discover all that has been sort of the trick. But this also came from, if you look at the format, that issue 1, this also came out of that book. And it kind of just helped me stay organized. Because when you get into public policy and advocacy with people who are advocates, the conversation can just go way off. People are very excited and they're very angry, and we need to do this and we need to do that, and we're all talking to each other. And so what I try to do is keep people organized. I'm always that behind-the-scenes person. Like if you just look at objective, or issue 1, objective, here's our message. The arenas of influence is what they were talking about today, the different areas that can influence where things are for you. So these are ours. The Bessie board is the board that's over the public education system. The state legislature, there's the budget. The agency that's actually over it, the governor had some input into it. So learning all those things. So when you put these together too, this is also education for the other providers and the other advocates in your group. You have that there, you're like, oh right, our budget is cut, we need to talk to all these people, not just this one place, on what's happening with our budget. So this kind of helped us stay organized, and it came right out of the book. So, and if you look on page 10, that issue 3, you can see it never got fleshed out. We just ran out of time, ran out of money, ran out of energy, but that's how it got started. The next couple of pages are things that you can steal if you want them. Page 11 is sort of the agenda for the day. I stole this from Texas. They didn't mind. There's an Adult Education Awareness Day lesson plan, also stolen from Texas. A sample speech or letter to the legislator. And then the proclamation that we used. I'll do that. It seems kind of silly to me, but I'm a very concrete, practical person. I don't really need something like this, but this is what I got from my legislator, which just has the wording that I have right here. But they love to do stuff. This is something small that they can do. He couldn't save that other pot of money for me, but he could do this little symbolic gesture. He read this at the legislative session on the day that we were there. So, but he became one of our state legislators of the year. And so now he knows us and he loves us. So he's on. So this is one thing that you can do to get people to start becoming a champion for you. And it's something that I have to learn because, I really sort of don't take these little things as important as they should, but every little thing helps. So if somebody can do something small for you, let them do it, honor them for it, and then next year they might be able to do something a little bit bigger for you. So that's the end of the legislation part. And then some of the things that we're doing ongoing is on page 15.